Happy Friday, folks. It's another wonderful time for Sonic Hosts Coast to Coast. This is your host, Malzilla, with my other host, Radri. Say hi, Radri.
Hello, I'm Mr.
We're
Frog.
back. Third episode. Yes, you are, Mr. Frog. Well,
Smiling
we're
Friends
back.
reference,
Hard to
if anybody
believe.
gets that. Go on. We're back, yes. Continue.
You know, I've never actually watched that show, but
It's great. You should watch it.
I'm
Oh,
starting to
man, it's
absorb
awesome. It's the next Rick and Morty.
the next Rick and Morty without the allegations.
Yeah,
Without the
without
allegations.
storming McDonald's and demanding Szechuan sauce and standing on tables and stuff like that.
So we're back for our third episode. Hard to believe it's the third one, and thank you for joining us again. Again, follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, join our Discord. Again, our podcast is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So today's original plan for the episode was to give you all guys a little bit of a MBA, Masters of Business Administration, on the financial dealings of Sega, but that's a lot of data that we didn't have time to go through, so we're going to do that on for another week. But we have another fun little main topic today for you today. But before we get to that, let's go over some of the news from the last week. So, this week, supposedly, the IDW Spring special was supposed to come out. Sadly, it did not. It was delayed to the end of the month, which would mean it's no longer the spring special, but the summer special. But it turns out the issue was supposed to originally come out back in April. So it's about a 2 month delay. So all I have to say to that is, what the hell, IDW? Get your shit together. Because not only have they been late with a lot of Sonic issues, if you've been following the IDW run, but they've been doing this to a lot of their other books: Turtles, Transformers, the Ponies, so on and so forth. So I know they've had some financial issues over the last couple of years, but you gotta make sure the trains and the books come out on time, or Sega might be looking for another distributor. What do you think of that, Radri?
To be fair, like what you were just previously saying about the financial dealings of Sega, I think this is a whole other can of worms that I would love to figure out why IDW is late or why they've been notoriously late, according to you, because I've never heard this before until you brought it up. But I guess supposedly they've always been late in a lot of. I guess they have until, according to Google, summer starts in June 20 on June 20th. So I guess they still have time, but yes, it is very, very late. I don't know. I'm not sure why they're
Yeah,
doing this, but
eh,
whatever. I guess
it
it's
is
just an
what it
IDW
is.
thing.
Yeah, it's an IDW thing. Normally, I'd say it's a Sega thing, but I think Sega is in the clear on this one. So,
Well, that's the funny thing.
moving on
Let
to
me add something to that real quick. That's
okay.
the funny thing, like about reputations or about people who have reputations. Um, what I say about that, it's like, for example, if somebody gets known for doing one thing, we automatically assume that it's such and such or so and so, right? For example, like Nintendo. Nintendo has like the reputation of being it. It's kind of, I guess the best word to describe it is like anti-consumer. And at some point, because like for example, like
One
you
way to
can't.
put it.
Yeah, and they've had trouble in the past. I can't remember the exact. I think there was like some Summer Games Fest or not Summer Games Fest. It was like some video game uh, organization where everybody thought it was Nintendo, but it wasn't Nintendo. It actually was not their fault. But because they have that reputation, people automatically assume, Nintendo's like trying to attack the consumers again, right? They're trying to, reprimand them in a weird way for some odd reason. I guess because they're sensitive or something. I don't know what their problem is. But the other thing I wanted to mention before we lay this topic to rest is if anyone out there knows why IDW is slow to delivered these books? I'd be interested to know. And mind you, today's episode, for a lot of people, it's gonna be, I'm trying to tiptoe around not making this a gossip show. I don't want to ever make the show a gossip show. I want to make the show more of something about talking about the news, talking about how we consume the news as Sonic fans, and how it's important for you. So, with that public service announcement out of the way, please continue. Malzilla, please.
Well, like I said, we're here for the good vibes. Though, let's be honest, sometimes Sonic fans make it a little hard, and that which leads us to the next topic. So,
There you go. Perfect segue.
if you're of a certain age, you may be familiar with Adult Swim in either as an anime block, an adult cartoon block. Odds are you've watched them in some capacity. So, they tweeted out a hilarious image of the 9 layers of hell. Layer 1, weebs. Layer 2, juggalos. Layer 3, swifties. Layer 4, Minecraft YouTubers. Layer 5, Disney adults. As a former Disney employee, that's accurate. Below them, fish heads. And below them, Joe Roganites. The second to last layer of hell is bronies, and there at the bottom, with Satan himself, is the blue hedgehog that dragged us all down to the bottom of hell, Sonic fans. So, according to Adult Swim, we are the 9th layer of hell. And guess how the official Sonic the Hedgehog Twitter responded to that? With the classic Eric Andre gift of, why would you say something so controversial yet so brave? But let's be real, we're pretty much down there in hell.
I disagree.
Raji,
but
what do you think? Oh, you disagree? Do you disagree with the order of the rankings, or the fact that we are
the order of the
in
rankings,
hell
definitely,
in general?
definitely. Well, because here's the interesting thing about this Adult
Yeah.
Swim thing. I actually looked up. I said, okay, before the show, I need to know who the artist is of this piece. I could not find it. I mean, maybe you could say I didn't dig hard enough, and they probably have like a resident in-house artist or something who does all their artwork or something. But it's
That's what
like,
I figured.
well, yeah, but why can't they credit him? I don't get it. Or her, or whoever it might be. Or they, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure who this person is.
Work for a higher contract.
Well, it's like, this is obviously very opinion based, and it's like, I mean, I was reading a bunch of the comments because this was making the rounds everywhere with like Sonic fans and all these forums, and you have people like yourself who are like, you know, like the Homer Simpsons who are like, it's funny because it's true. And then you had a lot of people who I did kind of agree with. They're like, why isn't Rick and Morty on this list? Do you know? Because as we said earlier,
I would rank the Joe Roganites below as worse than the Sonic fans, but
well,
that's a whole nother can of worms.
I mean, if I was going to objectively say that this thing is correct, I would say it's incorrect. Because if you think about, I guess it depends on how you're ranking these levels of hell. It's like, what actually has happened within the Sonic fandom that earns this trophy? You know? I mean, like, nobody in the Sonic fan, I mean, knock on wood, I hope this never happens. I hope we never have to talk about it. They haven't killed anyone. I mean, maybe the worst sort of sins you could think about is like Chris Chan, but like that's pretty self-contained. I mean, you could be a Sonic fan and not even mention that, you know? It's not like, for example, like, what is it? Sometimes, like, I go into some Sonic groups, and then there's a bunch of people always talking about, well, not so much anymore, but they used to always be talking about Ken Penders. And some people get tired of the Ken Penders chat and the talk, and I get it. It's just like, but the problem with Ken Penders is that he actually contributes to Sonic. So if you want to actually talk about the future of Sonic the Hedgehog, he does kind of get in the way here and there. I mean, it is on the table. Yes and no. I mean, you could probably argue that it isn't, but I don't know. It is a thing. So I don't know if it's really deserving.
He's written himself into the history of the franchise.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really deserving of that level. To me, it's just, this seems like somebody who had a really bad experience of being in the Sonic fandom, or they had a bad experience with a Sonic fan. I don't know if this was on the internet
Or they
or
drew it back in like 2012.
what
Maybe it's
was bad
actually
about
like a.
what was worse about 2012? I
But
mean, it makes sense to be recycling old content, but
well, I was actually gonna quasi seg this in the way. Again, we're not affiliated with any of the other big Sonic YouTubers, but Chowmix put out a really interesting video today about Sonic's worst enemy in the early 2000s was YouTubers and game reviewers, because IGN and all those guys was just, instead of giving fair critiques to the games, and not to say that the games are great at that time of year of the franchise, except for Generations, but a lot of them were really bad takes, like just disingenuous. Like there was one person who did an article, the top 10 worst Sonic characters, and number 1 was Tails. Like how do you even, like, it's Tails. What's wrong with Tails? Why would he be the number 1 worst Sonic character? I don't know. It's just, people were mean at that time in the internet. Just people wanted to just dunk on things. Everyone, it any video game review channel pretty much had a Sonic 06 review. Why this is the worst game ever made. Yada yada. But
that
yeah,
might have just kind of been a product of the time, because like that was the only way you could get
yeah,
attention. Because like if you go back to like the early '90s and how edgelordy a lot of people were just to get people's attention, because that's what you had to do, because nobody wanted to like watch or listen to you, you know. I mean, now it's like you can't be
gotta
as
get that
edgelordy.
engagement.
Yeah, you can. Well, you can get the engagement, but like there is such thing as like bad engagement or like toxic traffic, right? So you don't want that, or
That's
especially
true.
if you're like a big
Don't
company,
want to.
right? But probably at that
That's true.
that stage, uh, any traffic, because probably it was harder to reach people. Now it's super simple. You make 5 tweets and you're like, hey, go look at me. Just retweet this. So you give the Justin Bieber or something, then you pay him $500 to retweet it or something.
Retweet the
I don't
Sonic
know.
Host Coast to Coast Twitter page.
Yeah, yeah. Hashtag stealth
But
plug.
moving on, still plug. Ooh ah. But moving on from Adult Swim's bizarre opinion of the Sonic fandom, I did want to touch basis on the Summer Games Fest that happened last weekend. Now, if you've listened to episode 2, which you probably have if you're listening to episode 3, we did a kind of a thorough rundown of Sonic X Shadow Generations, of the information that we had at this time. We've gained a little bit more information since then. A lot of They had a demo available of the Space Colony Arc Act 1 and the BioLizard fight available to test, and people played it. There's videos all over YouTube. It looks pretty great. I watched the BioLizard fight and I had absolute flashbacks to playing SA2. The music, him coughing up the little energy balls, and you have to jump over them before grinding on the rail on his head, and it's like, dang, this is taking me back. And then of course he's got new moves. He's shooting the little eggs at you, and oh, now you can shoot Chaos Spirits back. And what they've done with Chaos Control, they've kind of made it like the old Mystic Melodies of SA and SA2, where if you play it, you can open up new paths. Well, if Shadow's running along, he hits Chaos Control. He can slow down time so he can make cooler platforms, but it will also open up new pathways, like ring paths will show up so you can like light speed dash in different directions. And there seems to be multiple paths. So from what we've seen, level design looks good. It looks engaging. And there were a lot of interviews with Tezuka, and kind of said it's not going to be as long as Sonic Generations, but it's going to provide some content, and
Oh, I know. According to
seems
you,
like all the
Sonic
levels,
Generations isn't very long, right?
9 levels, 2 acts
Damn.
each. This and so they're gonna each of these are gonna have 2 acts as well. So we're looking at least 3 to 4 confirmed, maybe a couple extra. We'll find out more probably as the summer goes along. But getting back to the Takeshi Iizuka interviews, Sonic Stadium had an interview with them, asked a variety of questions. One that has gained traction was asking about the future of the Freedom Fighters. It happens, and we kind of got a bit of a non-answer because from what I understand and what I've read of the interview and heard from other people saying that obviously it was kind of a wordy question, so you know Izuka had a translator with them from Sega of America, and apparently the Sega of America rep just said we're with IDW now, and it's kind of a weird answer because as most people know, the Freedom Fighters, the Sad AM characters, are Archie. They're owned by Sega. And Wild Brain, to an extent, which is a partner Sega has used, they were the production company for Sonic Prime. So it was just kind of a weird statement. I mean, again, us Freedom Fighter fans, we'd like a little validation, a little say, hey, we see you, we appreciate you. We're not asking to take over the franchise, but just some love sent our way. A little bit would be nice. Brad, you have thoughts.
Oh yeah.
Unleash
Oh
hell.
yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, Sonic Stadium. If you'd like to come on this show and clear anything up, any allegations I may press, well, not allegations. I guess they are. I don't know. Well, I shouldn't tease them as allegations, but here's the thing. And I said earlier that I don't want to become a drama show. I don't want to start like, as we said off the record. I don't want to be slinging mud at Sonic Stadium, but no, I'm kidding. They had this tweet and they posted it, and I think they weren't expecting the reaction to it because they then deleted it. And I asked them on Twitter. I said, "Hey, why did you delete the tweet?" And of course, if you look at the number of QRTs or quote retweets, you see a lot of there's a lot of people who are sounding very despondent about it. They're like, "Oh man, like why is this the cards we got?" Right? And then there's others that are like resharing the same image as like I guess a copy pasta or something of this guy with a backpack that's barely holding itself together. And everybody's like, the dream is gone. Stop dreaming. You freedom fighter freaks. Just give up. It's done. That's kind of the attitude they're having. And
yeah, sadly, the Sonic fandom we can't be nice to each other. We can't.
Well,
we try, but we can't.
Here's the thing I think with that is that this is an internet problem. The problem is you have everybody who's anonymous. Yeah, everyone's anonymous, and think about it. Think about like what is it? Cancel culture, right? Sorry to sound like an old man. Like this is all about the cancel culture problem. No, I'm not trying to. Here's what I'm trying to say. Is let me explain myself. Is that people love canceling things on the internet. That's just the thing. They like doing it. They all seem to have like this sort of like persecution complex. I mean, and I think there's probably good reasons for this of why somebody sort of feels that way. Maybe they feel like the world is not to talk down to them, but like it's just they probably feel like the world is kind of working against them. And I get it. Life is tough. You got to work hard for the money. You got to make that bread. You got bills to pay. You got trouble, right? And I don't know. I mean, okay, here's the thing. I'm gonna be real. Like, can you think of any other fandom that like where you say this sort of thing, where you try to make a valid point of like saying, "Oh, I don't know, Godzilla, like Godzuki really does not belong in the Godzilla universe. How dare Godzuki be involved?" Or people bring up Godzuki like it's a real thing. Do you say this, or do you know anyone who says this? because I'm trying to like separate myself from the fandom, if you know what I
No,
mean.
not
Yeah, like,
really.
is there any other example? Like, I'm trying to like think of like, is this is this fair commentary? Like, I don't understand it. I mean, like, I want to understand this. I mean, I'd love to have like, I mean, this is where like maybe I guess guests entrances for this show would be valuable. Have one of these people who seems so vehemently against their return, and just kind of understand where it is they're coming from. Because to me, this just
And
seems like it's just entirely all mean spirited. But go on,
there's
you
a
have it.
lot of mean spirited. I do recall back in the early days of the aughts, especially around the 2002, 2003, 2004s. New fans were coming in through Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic X. You had a generational clash between all the people who are the classic on the 90s games and the Archies, and now, like, oh, it's just sadly we've had a lot of generations of Sonic clashing with each other. And, like, for me personally, I don't care for Sonic X, but I'm not gonna
I don't either.
think any less of people who do like it. um I know people want Cosmo back. I thought her story kind of finished, but hey, more power to you. And it's the same thing with Sally. It's like, or any of the freedom fighters. It's a little bit different because they were different medium for the most part, but they were Sonic to a lot of people, at least a lot of Americans. And especially in the 90s, America was kind of the big cash flow of the franchise. So again, long story short, you had some people being kind of bummed out, and then you had some kind of people celebrating people being bummed out, and that's just not cool. It's not cool.
Well, I'm not
But
sure whether.
some people.
Go on.
Oh, my thought was finished.
Your thought's finished. Okay. Well, I mean, this is another thing. I should also point out. I've been seeing a bunch of fan groups bring this up, uh, and they seem very despondent about the entire experience, as I said. Um, and the problem here is, I think another thing is that this is also Iizuka we're talking about. Iizuka, I mean, I will say one thing. Whenever I watch interviews with this guy, he reminds me so much of my current boss right now. Because my current boss is Japanese, and he's great. I love him, but he often says things that make no sense. Like, because like he's trying to say them in English, and his English isn't the best. And I'm like, and without doxing or saying his name, like, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're saying to me, right? And of course, there's a translator, of course, but at the same time, I think they're probably very worried Iizuka might say something, because he doesn't want to let down a whole subdivision or a whole group of fans, and probably he doesn't understand the whole we're in the IDW business now, right? And they're probably there just to protect Iizuka, because they probably don't want another two worlds theory, or what other goofs has
Oh, absolutely.
what other goofs has Iizuka said? He said a couple of others. What were they? Can you think of any others?
He said something.
I love him. Don't
He
get
said
me
if
wrong. I mean, I'll tell you one
what
thing.
the
I judge people based upon their character. And usually, sometimes even like when you show me a photo of like one person of who's talking to me, sometimes, not all the time, I can automatically tell what type of person this is. Just the way like what their resting face looks like, how they look at cameras, this sort of thing. Do they make an angry grimace? Sometimes you can be incredibly wrong. Maybe somebody has a resting bitch face, and but they're not actually a bitch. Like, I don't know, like what's her name? Like Aubrey Plaza, right? Had total resting bitch face, but she's like she has so much range, and she's such a great actress, right? So
She really is a good actress. She plays the sardonic really well. It's her bread and butter. But she's been in enough things where you can see it. She's got range. She's got range.
right, but I mean, if you showed me just a random picture of Audrey Plaza, and I'd think, oh, this she's just like she has only one character she can play, the bitch, right? But she's not. She's got. If you ever watch what's that, FX's Legion, and you should see how many different roles she plays in just that show.
Oh, she's great in that. She's great. She was great. Um, but yeah, it's you're probably right. They are probably protecting, Izuka from saying anything that could be misconstrued, which was kind of gonna happen anyway. But such is the Sega life. But call me an internal optimist. I think there are enough people, especially on the American side of Sega, that knows how much these characters mean and are trying to at least keep them in the conversation because again, people are asking for them, and again, if you do, be kind. Simple as that. Be kind. You know, be nice to Christy and the social media team. They're good people.
Christy? Katie, you mean, people. Right?
Katie. God, shame. I'm a fake Sonic fan. I don't even know.
Same thing. Same name. I saw her in person at Sonic Symphony. Yeah. And she was with Aaron Weber. But I'm not going to go any further than that because otherwise I'd be doxing somebody. So you can figure it out, internet. Yeah. Good luck. I'm sure you can put 2 and 2 together and do some internet sleuthing. But if you're too busy, it's not that exciting. Sleuthing. It's really not. But if you do, hey, let's shake hands. We'll do lunch.
We'll do lunch. But I kind of wanted to use this to springboard into our.
Oh, hold on. I know you're before you springboard to the next topic. I need to say, first of all, you're the internal optimist. I'm the internal pessimist. Right. I do agree with what you're saying, mind you. Sometimes you need a little yin and yang into your life, and so the which one's the bad one again? Is it the yang? I forgot. Anyway, doesn't matter. You understand? I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. If you don't, please say something in the comments. Like, Radley, you make no sense. I'm like an hour into this podcast. I'm like, what the hell is he saying? Please let me know. Anyway, so as a pessimist, a pessimistic take of it. Okay, let's say this: a pessimistic but optimistic at the same time. Now, this doesn't mean you should stop trying to push for the Freedom Fighters to be back into the main series. Those of you who are fans, you should not. This shouldn't be one thing that says, "Oh, well, I better give up." Remember, they make this product for us. It's not a product that's made for themselves. Obviously, this is a thing that needs to be enjoyed at an international level. And sure, you may have people who are like, I guess what I understand this as is, I will tell you one thing. I used to be, or I guess I still am, I don't know. I used to do YouTube videos on, content in Japan. Like things that happen in Japan. And people were very fascinated by it. I mean, today, now I just point everybody to Chris Broad, or I just tell you, hey, just come to Japan for yourself. It's cheaper than it's like the cheapest it's ever been, So I don't really need to make
cheaper.
Yeah, you should. If anybody's interested coming to Japan and you need some pointers, feel free to DM me. They're open. That being said, I've kind of pivoted out of it because there are still, mind you, there are still things that fascinate me about Japan and things that I love about Japan, but I've moved away from it. And I will say this as a content creator, since that's the term, what we're called today. Back then we were just called J-vloggers. But as a J-vlogger who saw many, 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 many new content creators come up while you had the crown, I totally get why some people would despise the Freedom Fighters, because maybe you see them as people or characters, not people. You see them as characters that are like what are these guys doing here? What do they belong here? I get it. Maybe it's that sort of feeling, but remember not to be too ignorant, and try to the way I picture it. I don't know if you've ever watched. I used to watch this thing on what was his name? It was a host. He I want to say Seth Meyers. Seth Meyers. I used to watch this one show of Seth Meyers where he talked to like one of his Gen Z staff, and they would just always talk about the differences about what made their generation great. And that's the kind of conversation I want to have. I want to talk about what I like about Sonic, and if you're Gen Z or younger, I want to hear about what you enjoy. So I feel like this should be the conversation, not like my Sonic is better than your Sonic, because this doesn't go good places. This is like, that makes it a toxic environment. So that's my piece.
It goes down a dark path.
Yes, it goes down a dark path. So that's my piece. That's my 2 cents for this week. I hope it means something to you. So therefore, Malzilla, please segue through us to the next chapter of our final destination.
So I kind of wanted to springboard because often the case when you ever see the freedom fighters mentioned on Twitter, a lot of the common things is they're products of their time, which is not wrong, but a lot of people say they don't fit in the modern continuity, to which I say Balderdash, they can fit. It's just going to take a little bit of elbow grease. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about how we would portray, how we present the Freedom Fighters and other SatAM characters in a modern Sonic game IDW world. Ian and Kyle, if you're listening, Ian, cover your ears. These are going to be considered fan ideas. Kyle, feel free to listen and heckle at us in the Bumblecast church.
Wait, are they actually listening? Are you serious?
They're not good.
Okay, good.
Oh,
all right.
Oh God, no. They would. I mean, I'm sure they know we're doing this, but there's no way they're listening.
Okay.
Ian's. I totally respect his policy against fan ideas and not getting in.
I don't know, man.
That
guy is a fucking. He's a joker, man. He's a massive lurker. I mean, like I don't know.
Oh, I'm sure Kyle is lurking. I know they're certainly lurking.
Okay. Well, we're those of you who just stumbling upon this podcast. Moving on. Yes.
Moving on. We love Ian and Kyle, but so we're kind of going presenting how we would do them. Artistically, post reboot Archie showed that you can give these characters designs that fit the Sonic aesthetic. Pretty much, generally, all their designs in the post boot were well received. I do miss Sally's cheek tufts, but in my heart, she'll always keep those. But moving on, let's start off with an easy one, or maybe not so easy, depending on how creative you want to be. Let's talk about Rotor first. Rotor the Walrus. If you're in the know, it was often stated in the SatAM Bible that Rotor was Sonic's BFF, who was also a mechanic. Now, we would all know the franchise would basically give that role to Tails. Now, mind you, again, SatAM was in development kind of alongside those early games, and lack of communication between divisions means some things kind of went to A and B. But I don't think that's necessarily something you don't need to take away from Rotor. I think both Tails and Rotor can kind of be those, mechanic grease monkeys best friends, because I also think there's different points in Sonic's life that have not been explored, especially his early days. Now, doubtful Sega will ever explore them. For all they're concerned, it starts with Sonic 1, and where Sonic actually came from will probably forever be a mystery. That's just kind of how they're doing it. But if I were to bring Rotor into the IDW game world, I would just have him be like a walrus with a salvage yard on the coast. He salvages Eggman tech, he refurbishes it, he builds stuff. Maybe he sells parts to Tails. Maybe he knows Sonic from back in the day. I mean, Sonic had to get the tornado from somewhere. He had to have someone maintain it, because due to Sonic Origins, we know that Sonic CD occurs before Sonic 2, and obviously Sonic had the tornado before Sonic 2, so he doesn't exactly strike me as the mechanic type before he met his little buddy Tails. So that's an idea of how I would do Rotor. I also, for some reason, imagine him kind of Polynesian, kind of like just a chillax guy who likes to surf, which is weird because walruses are more Arctic climate. So I don't know. Kind of some thoughts.
So
How would you do Rotor, Radri?
basically,
How
what
would
you're
you do
saying,
Rotor?
is he's Funky Kong from the Donkey Kong Country series.
Maybe not as, funky or kind of in your face, but I just see him as a chill guy. It's like, hey, Sonic, you need some metal?
What do you I saw somebody, I think it was McMistle or Mistle or whatever your fine name is on Twitter. Forgive me if I mispronounced it. He was saying about like, what do you okay, before I put in his comment, what do you think of the reboot design?
For Rotor?
Yes.
Or just in general? Rotor,
Do you prefer the
it's
original
kind of
one?
interesting. I'm about six to one, half a dozen the other. Um, Post boot Rotor looks like he's like done a bunch of like military press. He's a little top heavy. His legs look a little on the smaller side, but it works for Omega. So, um, I think it's fine. I do like him when he has his hat though. Rotor's got to have his hat.
Do you think he's better as like because it seems like the reboot design they make him more buff and a lot more serious, whereas like probably the Sad M one, he seems a bit more aloof, but kind of a genius at the same time.
Rotor is one of those Rotor's one of those characters that like even Ian said they had like hard time like hammering things out with like, oh, like they made him a politician for a while, but then fans wanted him back in the field, and they did. Rotor was a hard one because again, you got so many different cooks in the oven in the kitchen, and trying to figure out what they want to do with him. But yeah, I think for him, he doesn't have to be a main character. He can just be like an NPC in a game. It's like, oh, we need to find, 5 sheet metal of Egtanium. Well, maybe Rotor has some. Tails, let's go visit Rotor and maybe do a quest, trade some items, get some stuff, and then go off and do something else.
Because the way I pictured it, if like they ever did a Rotor game, the whole thing would just be like it would be kind of like what was it, the Toad video game? Like from Nintendo, where it's just like it's just you're going places and you're fixing things, and it would be a very like kind of it wouldn't be a fast-paced game. I mean, maybe you would say that like that's not Sonic because all Sonic games are fast, but I don't know. Or maybe okay. Here's the thing. Here's an idea. You have to fix things quickly. It'd be like a Five Nights at Freddy's thing, where like it's a stress management game, where you have to fix everything on like a board or in your lab or whatever, right? Because you're compressed on time or something. I think that would work.
Well, what character? That could work. Character-wise, what would you do to Rotor to bring him into the main continuity?
I think that all really
You just kind of
depends.
leave him as is for the most part.
I think that depends on what Sega wants. I mean, I think maybe when we have maybe the next episode, we'll figure out what is their investor report, maybe how that kind of relates to what they're looking for or what their direction is. Because us as fans, we're just sitting here trying to like, all we really do is just consume product. But to them, they're actually making the product, right? It's sort of like they're the ones doing the cooking. They're the adding the salt and adding the water, and then they're draining it out. By the way, if
More than anything, I would say they're the ones providing the money to the cooks.
okay,
And, so ultimately, yeah, they're going to make the order, but it's up to us to make the dish. Like, for example, if someone orders chicken, there are a zillion ways you can cook chicken. You can fry it, you can saute it, you can stir fry it, you can grill it, so on and so forth. How would you, if you said, bring Rotor back, we don't care how you do it, how would you do that?
how Rotor Black? I swear you said that. I know you just
Rotor.
mispronounced it. I know,
Uh,
I know. How would you bring back? I think it really. I think what is it? I think Ian had the right idea. I think he had a couple of misses though, because some people still complain about the reboots, or I don't know how that process. I'd have to do more research in terms of how that process went, because I remember Ben Bates when he posted his whole like Sally redesign. he had like a whole thing of like where it kept getting rejected. And it does kind of make me wonder, what did they reject about it? Like, what is it that they didn't like, right? Because I'm not sure what it is they're looking for. Because I don't know. It's like, to me, it's like if you throw me
Well, not
Sonic.
so much character design, but like what kind of role do you like? What kind of character do you see? What would you have Rotor do in the main continuity? 'Cause maybe I'm not explaining it right.
You mean like in the
Feels like you
No,
kind
it's
of
fine. I mean,
bouncing
that's
around.
why we're having the show. Do you mean in terms of the comics, or you mean in terms of the games, or do you
Or
mean?
just in general, because we're for all intents and purposes, comics and the games are the same thing
Well,
at this
I
point.
guess modern Sonic today just serves as a mascot. That's all he is. They don't really seem to want. I mean, at least what I'm getting from Sega is they keep separating all these different properties into what works best. Like what works best as a movie, what works best as a comic, what works best as such and such. So I kind of feel like if he was going to be back in the main one, is he would just have to be a mascot. That's it. Because that's what Sega seems to
Okay.
want. I guess then this is kind of goes into the next topic, like what makes a good mascot. You need to think about how you would use your branding for it to work well. And I guess for Rotor, it would be more something in like construction or something based in like, yeah, I would say mostly construction. I would, or maybe I'm not.
Okay.
I wouldn't say too much on tech, because I would say technology is more of Tails and maybe Sally's field. But that's my guess.
Oh, we'll get to Sally. We'll get to
All right.
Sally.
Okay.
But okay. Let's talk. I think honestly, of like the core four freedom fighters, the trickiest one to me to translate would be Antoine, because a lot of what made Antoine was, besides the bizarre French accent, was kind of that coward attitude of his. But as a story, as a character trait, that gets old fast. And once you get the character development beyond it, it kind of, you don't want to see them regress. So, like, couple of the ideas that I had, if I were to bring Antoine into um, the modern Sonic, what kind of role he would fill. I kind of these two ideas, and they play off either the idea that he is insecure of himself and is just so overconfident to hide his insecurities that kind of makes him look like a fool, or he's really just hesitant and scared, but when push comes to shove, he steps up to be almost kind of, a Neville Longbottom type, kind of the more passive, like, I don't want to do this, but oh no, my friends are in danger. I will do this type thing. So the two ideas that I have is I kind of like the idea of a Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther slash oh god, who's the Zenigata from Lupin the Third, as kind of this detective agent, kind of bumbling a little bit, but he's trying to catch criminals, and like maybe he's got like a family feud, a one-sided family feud with like Rouge the Bat. With Rouge, obviously, she's international jewel thief, secret agent, yada yada, and his family's been trying to catch her family for years, but can't because they've done enough government work. They've probably like cleaned out their records, or maybe he and Vector have a past where like they were detectives, but they went different ways. Like again, I think there's some interesting ways you could bring him, but at the same time, a lot of what he's known for, especially in the comics, was he was a swordsman. So I think a kind of a fun thing is like you kind of almost portray him as a Don Quixote type Ronin. That if you were playing in like an open world game, he would kind of appear in town to towns, and he's trying to save the day, but he's so bad at it that Sonic has to like, okay, I gotta help this guy, or things are gonna go bad, and they do the thing, they save the day, and he takes all the credit, and Sonic's just like, you know what, whatever, man, I'm off to the next town. How'd you do, Antoine?
Well, I do like the idea of the whole the mystery thing, where he tries to solve mysteries, and I think you should. I think that is a good idea to make him kind of
The
a
inspector-
kind of a bumbling idiot if somebody actually likes that from the SATM. What is it? Iteration. But I think a lot of people are kind of. I mean, in general, this is just me gauging the reaction upon it. But a lot of people got kind of annoyed at how much of a comic relief Antoine was. So I don't think you want to lean too much on like the bumbling aspect. I think maybe something that's a
Yeah.
bit more complimentary to the character. Yeah, the sword thing is definitely a big one. I guess you have to, yeah, it's like what you're saying. You kind of have to think about a character that has a sword, but because if you think about like what is like um, a mystery detective, like let's say Sherlock Holmes or something, he doesn't have a sword. Like, why the hell does he have a sword, right? And that's why like the Don Quixote thing comes in. But I think that I don't know. You need to have it to the point where like I'm pretty sure the fans they want to see something to where he's uh, suave, but at the same time not too bumbling. I think that's how you do him right. And then you also have to, I mean, I imagine most fans probably want to have some sort of fans of the character. They want to have like why his relationship makes sense to Bunny, as in like the Archie series, because people are going to ship it automatically, even if
Oh
they're
yeah.
quote unquote friends. But you also need to sort of develop it in a way to like, because if you think about Bunny, she's really like, because the old Sad M cast, they were basically just um,
They were
the
archetypes.
ragtag like archetype types that have a really good foil with each other. Each one has a role to play. They're not like all the muscles. They're not all the brain. That sort of thing. You mean like I guess you could say like Sonic was like the secret muscle, and that's why the show is named after him. Whereas like Bunny is also a muscle, but like you have to sort of go into why does her relationship make sense with Antoine? What is it that's what is it that why does their relationship work? And I think that's when you kind of have a character. In terms of like selling the
Yeah, I
character,
think that's something that
that's something. Go on.
I was gonna say. I was gonna say that's something that they could once the characters have been, introduced, they could explore further down the line because obviously the freedom fighters collectively, I mean, you could bring them back as a group unit. I mean, a lot of people, the common idea is like, oh, maybe they were just a group like, the resistance during the Eggman forces and, conquer. Or I almost think it'd be kind of fun just have them don't have that connection that they had, just kind of being individual characters, and then we kind of see how they all come together and what comes out of that. I'd find that interesting. Which if we're talking about Bunny, that she's my next one on the list.
Before we lay that to rest, I guess in terms of like a mascot, like how what Sega wants to do, I guess he would be good for like, um, hmm, what would he be good in terms of mascot? I have to think about that. Maybe selling, because you think about mascots like cartoon mascots. What things would they sell with Antoine's face on it? I'm not drawing any pictures. What do you think, Malzilla?
Action figures,
Action figures?
action figures,
I'm
plushies.
thinking of like
I
something like
mean, if you
products,
look
like
at what, well, I'm just looking at like the Sonic merch that's coming out. If you want to kind of take that angle, it's plushies, it's action figures, play sets, Lego sets. You have him, as a runner on Speed Force's Speed Battle. He's got like a sword attack. It's that stuff actually kind of sets itself up, at least in my opinion.
hmm right. Yeah, it's the only thing I'm having trouble with Antoine is that it seems like I don't really know because I'm trying to like picture
He's a
like
little tricky.
yeah, like because I think generally like you have a personality and you need to match the personality with the products that they should sell because I think that's how because this is how Sega looks at these characters now.
speaking of products and sales, we were talking about Bunny. Bunny, I honestly think is the character that needs the least work because Bunny's awesome. It's she's a cyborg rabbit. What's not to love? You could put her in a bunch like she'd be great in a Sonic fighting game. She'd be great in kind of open world exploration. She's got like jets in her feet. Her left arm can turn into like a blaster. Obviously you got the Wispon tech, that's circulating, the comics and the game. So, she could kind of be like Whisper, she's got a variety of like wisps that she can kind of just load into her arm and haha, she's Mega Man, but a bunny. But I also think part of her character is it's kind of that Southern Belle. Now, I don't think you go full like Mississippi, Alabama, like Rogue from the X-Men, but I think, if you put her, because her cowboy outfit in, during what is arguably the worst part of the Archie run was like one of the key highlights because it was such a good look for her. She kicked so much butt. She was so fun to have around. Like, I see her as like the sheriff marshal of Mirage Saloon. Like, go Texan, like sheriff, because that's kind of fun. I think kind of maybe she's not necessarily traveling world, but she's kind of protecting her little town. That's kind of think what I would do with her. Again, I don't think she needs a whole lot. As for like the origin of her cybernetics, you could do a variety thing. I know Ian in the post boot basically had her get injured to the point where like, oh, she needs cybernetics. Because again, the roboticizer isn't really a thing in the main game show, so you can't really do that route. Or you could kind of pull, a Cable from the X-Men and she got infected with the metal virus and it mutated. So when Sonic and Silver, you know, saved the planet from the metal virus, maybe she still had it and it just stayed on her legs and her arm. Oh no, there's some fun things you could do with it.
Yeah, see again, this is why like this is so much trouble because I don't really know what Sega wants and like what direction they're going with this. So it's hard for me to like
But
really like definitively say this is the what she should do or this is what she shouldn't do.
let me put this in perspective. I think you're focusing a little bit on what Sega wants,
Okay.
as opposed to like what kind of role would she fit in the narrative. Because like think about this: what do Surge and Kit sell? What does Doctor Starline sell? If we think about the IDW characters that have kind of popped up in the comics,
Oh, you mean in terms of like their
you're kind of
story, in
applying.
terms of the comics?
Like kind of what you've been saying. Like, what does Sega want to sell with these guys? Like, well, Sega's not even selling anything with most of the IDW cast. So I think that's something. It's a factor not to think. You don't need to think about.
Okay.
At least, kind of from my perspective. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out my ass. I don't know.
I mean, I guess this is where it gets kind of tricky. Is it all really depends because Sega seems like they have a lot to work with, but it also really depends on what. To me, this is how I'm seeing it. Is just like what is their overall direction? Like where are they trying to go with this? Because it seems like either because I know Ian Flynn has really tried to push for like making everything cohesive, making everything the same thing. But it seems like there's just so many different iterations to the point where it's like, well, how do you make this work? And to me, the only answer really is you just make them all mascots and based upon this. Because it doesn't seem like, because I will go to the grave, I will die in this hill with this comment. But to me, it just seems like Sega wants to keep Japanese Sonic and American Sonic separate. It's sort of like similar to how we were going to talk about this, but Toho with Godzilla, and this is where you step in with the Godzilla stuff, is there's American Godzilla, and then there's also Japanese Godzilla. But as that Gus Fring meme goes, they are not the same. So I don't
You'd be
think
actually be
go
to
on.
give our listeners a little teaser. I will say this: the MonsterVerse and Toho's Godzilla films are a lot more connected than you think.
Okay.
I'll just leave that on that little teaser. So,
Okay.
I yes, you can say that Sega's trying to keep American Sonic and Japanese Sonic separate, but the truth of the matter is, since IDW Comics are getting worldwide releases, which is something Archie never really had because again, different time, different place. You know, these characters, especially IDW, are now getting a much broader audience. And when we look at these SatAM and characters, the Freedom Fighters, and other characters like Uncle Chuck, Nogus, Snively, Lupe the Wolf, it's like these are characters that you can pull off the bench and put them in, but you need to tweak them a little bit. Like example, kind of like we were talking about Bunny, but like some are easier than others. Like Nogus, let's just have a bring. You need an evil wizard. You bring him in. You do our Rita Repulsa. Like I've been after 10,000 years. I'm free. Time to conquer Earth. You have that. You set up an entire adventure with that alone. Easy peasy. Uncle Chuck. Oh, he's Sonic's uncle. Well, how come Sonic's never mentioned him? It's not important. I mean, how do you think he got the tornado? You think he stole it? Sonic a thief? Nah, he just got it from his uncle, and his uncle's somewhere doing science things. It's just kind of fun. So again, I think these characters, and kind of going back to the whole thing that started this, is a lot of people think they don't fit creatively. My argument is they can fit. You just need to, flex those creative muscles a little bit. You can definitely find a role, and while being true to those characters that we all grew up with.
Oh yeah.
You don't kind of
Oh
want
yeah.
a Geno situation, Godzilla in name only, as we saw in like Godzilla '98, the first TriStar American Godzilla.
Oh yeah, I mean we have creative people out there and people who know how to like respect the fans and like fans of these characters. I mean, they know what we want, or they have. I would argue they have a pretty good idea, or I'd like to think they have a good idea, or they have an understanding of it. So to me, I feel like the big problem here is not they don't really fit. It's just sort of like or that how do you make them fit? The problem is Sega. They need to decide or they need to like make some sort of. I mean, I know they're a private company and they have the reasons for saying why they're not returning. Um, but to me, it's just sort of like, hurry up, man. Like, give us a statement on it. Like, either like tell us like why they're not showing up, or why do you still have them, or why are you putting them under lock and key? And I guess maybe we could probably like guess it's because they don't want to have another Pender situation again, or I don't know what the reasoning is. So I guess what I'm trying to say is keep pushing.
The reason, yeah, okay. Well, we'll wrap up the main topic with the character you've all been waiting for. Rajri, how would you bring Sally into the main continuity?
Oh, hold on.
I have multiple ways.
We still have who else do we have in the Freedom Fighter cast? Dulcie. Who else isn't SatAM? Or she doesn't count.
Well, now technically, I mean, she is SatAM. Sonic Superstars has introduced dragons. Technically, you could. Maybe she's connected to Trip.
That'd be cool.
Maybe she's a lizard. I mean, again, the point is, you can make this work. You just got you got to think about it.
What was the Penders thing he had for Dulcie? Like dragons can never lie, or they can sense lies, or what was it? What was the
Yeah, apparently, like it was this one thing where like dragons are they can't tell lies. They're God, I can't speak.
Incapable.
They're incapable of telling lies.
No
yeah.
worries. Huh. Okay. Well, I imagine they won't go with that. All right. Well, I don't know. What did you think of the reboot, Dulcie?
It was interesting because obviously, you had the, China-inspired Far East area, Ian, to his credit, did the easy thing. You do the 4 aspects: the Dragon of the East, Tiger of the West, Turtle of the North, Vermilion Bird of the South. He did. You've seen that in a zillion animes
Oh,
and other
really?
little
I didn't know
stories.
that.
Oh yeah, that was the whole post boot thing. I forget the names. They had like white tiger. There was a little bird, and then like a tortoise. It was like an old girl kung fu group, and they're all kind of based on the little the 4 aspects. So
Here's a question for
again,
you: did you enjoy this?
I was kind of impartial.
Because
I kind of read.
yeah, that's the impression I get too. A lot of people seem impartial about
Well,
this.
Well, again, and I'll will fully admit to my own biases. The post boot, it was hard for me to enjoy a lot of it just because coming off being raised on the pre boot and suddenly like it's all gone and you're trying to heal the trauma of losing all that, and you're trying to give all these characters, and there were some great arcs in the post boot. Obviously the Champions arc that was the adaptation of Sonic the Fighters. The Eclipse trilogy over in Sonic Universe was good, and Ian and Evan, they all did a lot of fun, creative things to establish this new world. But again, it was hard to enjoy the new world without missing what we had lost, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my answer.
Okay.
Could just
Yeah,
pop out,
because
but,
I don't really know if that all works. That's the thing. Is this doesn't really complement the old character. But then again, Dulcie herself was kind of she was more of another comic relief. I don't know if the producers of the show
yeah.
thought like
I mean,
that.
they
They thought the whole. Did
I
you cut
think they
out?
just
What
wanted to
happened?
bring in another girl. Oh,
Oh,
I'm still. Can
okay.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
Yeah, it seemed like they just. I think the answer was they needed another girl character, so they brought her in.
Okay. And they needed
But
another comic
yeah,
relief.
Dulcie's kind of. Yeah, I know. Dulcie again. That's kind of like the trying to fit a rhombus into a triangle shaped hole. It's you might have to shave off a few things and change things, but yeah.
What did you think?
But let's move on to Sally.
Hold on, real quick, real
Or do you
quick.
want
I'm
to talk?
sorry. There's one more. There is actually two more, I guess you could say. One of them actually is already in IDW. There's Uncle Chuck, but then there's Mutsky, right? Because they made Mutsky as a reboot character, and they made him an actual character, and not a dog.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I think Ian's thing is like he kind of wanted to make Uncle Chuck kind of your typical Doc Brown, and Mutsky the dog, or Ben the Mutsky, whatever his updated name one was going to be, kind of your Marty McFly, Morty to Uncle Chuck's Doc Brown / Rick Sanchez. But again, that really didn't go anywhere because the book got canceled.
Is that what they were trying to do? Really? They wanted to make it a
Well,
Rick and Morty
at
thing?
least that's kind of, well, not so much Rick and Morty, but more Doc and Marty.
Well, this
At least
this
that's what I think
predates Rick and
Ian
Morty,
said.
but yes. Or I can't remember when the first
Yeah.
Rick and Morty, the Rick and Marte or something. I forgot what the first Rick and Morty was by Justin Roiland back in the day. But anyway, all right. Well, yeah, we've gotten to the very end of this. Sally Acorn. Well, that one's easy for me. Politician, leader.
Okay.
Because I mean, obviously you can tell in the IDW comics, there's a gaping hole of where she fit into the comic book, and it's getting to the point where everybody's always saying like, oh, this is the next Sally, or Lanolin is Sally, or Amy was Sally, or Jewel plays Sally. So obviously it's just, she's the politician leader type. Very easy, I think she's probably the easiest.
Okay. Yeah, I would actually say it. It's always one of those funny things where it's like, again, people say, "Oh, they don't fit. Oh, there are no monarchies in the Sonic world." I'm like, well, technically, Blaze is a princess. If you wanted, you could make Sally Blaze's rival from the Soul Dimension,
That'd be interesting.
or that would be interesting. Soliana technically exists, so you know, Princess Elise is a thing. So there are technically monarchies in the Sonic world without even having to go to the Soul Dimension. But I actually think the to get Sally, because again, it's one of the big, daunting things with her is how do you portray her that kind of, invokes the Sally we all grew up with? And I think she doesn't have to be a princess to do that, but I think she needs to have a connection to Sonic's youth. Like I think they need to be childhood friends. Maybe she was the first friend and then they obviously went off on their own paths. I would actually take a note from the Fleetway comics because Fleetway had its own Sally Acorn, obviously more in the, Ricky vein, where she became a reporter. Like Sally being a journalist trying to like expose, Eggman or, fighting injustices, that feels very Sally to me. And I could see her, maybe she's traveling the world trying to expose, the man. I don't know. I think you could do that. Um, you could play up like her being a hacker. Like I can see a lot of Barbara Gordon from her time as Oracle. For those of you familiar with the DC comics, I could see a lot of that in her. If you want to keep in the DC influence, and if you really want to go on to take her in a really different direction, basically turn you could bring the freedom fighters back as eco terrorists, as kind of the opposite spectrum from Eggman, because Eggman's all about the tech. You could have these who are like, we should go back to nature, down with the machines, and have like the freedom fighters kind of be the the wannabe League of Assassins, League of Shadows from Batman, with Sally's dad being your wannabe Ra's al Ghul and her being the Talia. So you could almost do a whole little, if you wanted to do the whole love triangle thing, you could have Amy be Catwoman, Sonic be Batman, and Sally be Talia. But again, these are all loose references. There's a bunch of ways you can do her. I think that's kind of well, not well. There's a bunch of ways you can bring her in. Just do her brings in some different interesting connotations. But there are a bunch of different ways you could have Sally be a viable supporting character NPC, whether she's a princess or not. What do you think?
Again, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hate to keep stressing this, but it's just sort of like, to me, the what I'm seeing here is it really all depends on what Sega wants, because it's just sort of like I don't really know what works anymore. This is the biggest problem. But I think everything you said was fine. Everything works. Everything would work. Maybe you could say that there's certain ideas that might not. Maybe you think at the time it really works, but then it causes issues later. Like probably maybe that's what Ian was going with the whole Mutsky thing. That maybe like let's make him a human, but we weren't really expecting the reaction that we got of people, kind of a backlash of people not liking this character being not a dog but being an actual character, right? So I think it's really hard to say. Of course, yes, there are ways to like complement the older character, and I think everything you said was great. What I really think, I mean, and this is kind of a cop-out answer, I know, but to me, it seems like I need to figure out what is Sega's current direction. What are they looking to make for the future for us to really propose any like clear ideas? That's what's going through my brain cells.
That's that's fair, but I'm also gonna say that's like solving an ever evolving Rubik's cube. There may never be an answer.
Okay. Yeah, that's
At least not
yeah.
yet.
Okay. Um,
Because
I'm gonna.
ultimately, at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. Oh,
I think there's a way to
you have
solve
an
it.
idea? Tell me.
I think there's a way to solve it. We look at more data, and we come back and we figure out what is, and kind of guess here about what direction Sega's headed in, and how do we fit them in to, because I'm pretty sure is that the problem what they have right now is that they just have too many characters and they don't know what to do. And they're like, use the ones we know. Use the ones that are safe. And these characters are kind of not really safe for them. But I think the kind of the point of what us as fans need to do, we need to say, no, 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 there's a following for this. There is a love for this, and there is a direction you can take. Because I do know that Sega themselves, they do pay a lot of attention to what the fans are saying. They may not have like time to like listen to this long podcast, but generally, if you can get kind of a clear message that everyone agrees on, I think probably they would, acquiesce to that eventually.
And I think kind of what you're getting at, and I think kind of what really need to do is, I believe Sega has the right people to tell the right story. Ian, Evan, some of the writers on the Japanese side. Now, obviously, there's a whole nother topic of who takes the lead, who follows. But I think and really even going all the way back to what we talked about in the very beginning is that we need to let Sega know that we love these characters. We love seeing, they know we love seeing Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Shadow. Rouge is starting to get a lot of, she's starting to pop up more. I know when they were talking about Sonic Dream, all Sonic Dream Stars or whatever the Dream one for Apple IS, that's Sega Hardlight says, oh, we're big Cream fans, so we're excited to bring her. Big showed up in Frontiers. They, we keep supporting, like letting them know, like, hey, we like these characters as characters. We like seeing them. Maybe no, we don't necessarily have to play them, but like, hey, we like seeing them. We like having them be around. They add to the greater narrative. And then and if Sega says, okay, well, we're going to pursue more narrative based stuff, Ian, Evan, other writers pick up the pen and start writing. And I think that's a direction I think we all can kind of agree where we want them to go.
Yeah. So if you learned anything today, guys, I mean, I'll say it again. I'll say it 500 times. Keep pushing. Keep drawing your fan art. Keep making comments about it. And if you find somebody who's
be kind to one another.
Yeah, be kind to one another. I mean, if you find somebody who's yucking your yum, don't enable them. I mean, sure, it's fun to troll people, and it's fun to like engage, and it's fun to challenge people. But I don't know. Choose your challenges wisely. Sometimes you can change people's minds. You can, especially if the
rare in this day and age.
What? Say that again.
I said it's rare in this day and age.
No. I mean,
this day and age to change people.
I mean, if you have the evidence and if you have the data, I mean, like you can't really lie about numbers. Sure, you can make yourself look like
lie about numbers, but it's just the person has to be open to the change, and that is the tricky part.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, they would have to be open to the change, but you can kind of tell when someone's open for change, if like, especially if they're willing to have a conversation with you that's not one-sided, or that's not like the person's clearly up their own ass or something. I don't know. I mean, I generally gauge upon what it is, how they, express themselves online before I actually challenge them on something. So, but I don't know. I think it's good to challenge people on things. Not everyone, mind you. But yes. Anyway, the PSA is over, folks. Sorry. This is a collection of PSAs. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a collection of PSAs.
Oh, I guess you're going to lead out with final thought. Is that right?
Yeah, we're going to say we've been here for a couple hours now. Or it feels like a couple hours.
That's only an
But yeah, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, again, thank you all for listening. Again, do follow us on the socials. Uh, Sonic Coast to Coast on Twitter. We post some fun memes. We post some random thoughts. We are again on Tumblr. Feel free to, if you post a note on YouTube, we are always happy to send Discord invites. We are kind of building a fun little group of people chit chatting about this, that, and whatever. And again, also tell us what you want to hear us talk about. You know, uh, we both love the freedom fighters, and so we kind of wanted to talk about them a little bit today. Um, we also, there's some other things that we want to talk about, but it's also not those things that we want to talk about. You might not want to listen about. So let us know. We've been planning some fun little topics regarding the Sonic Cinematic Universe properties, uh, some IDW character analysis, like what we think of like Surge, Kit, Starline, all that fun stuff. So yeah, let us know what you're interested in, and we'll talk about it because we will have thoughts. As you can tell, we're both pretty opinionated assholes, so we'll definitely be entertaining about it.
Yeah, no. I mean, if there's anything in particular, yeah, if there's something you'd like, because I love talking about. I mean, this is just me. Like when I was in college, I mean, I love critiques. I like talking about things, about what things work, what things don't work, and color and typography and all that great stuff. So I have thoughts. I have notes. I always do.
Okay. Well, with that being said, we thank you once again for listening into the Sonic Coast to Coast podcast. Till next time, have a way past cool day.
Can we end it like, what is it? Like, what is it? Most Extreme Elimination Challenge? Don't get eliminated!
Don't get eliminated!
or what's another one you could do?
No, don't piss off Sega!
Yeah, don't piss off Sega. Yeah.
There we go.
What's that one from like the 1950s, The Thing movie? Where like they say stuff like, keep watching the skies! Keep watching the skies!
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Roll around at the speed of sound.
Chat,
Something
internet, tell
related,
us
yeah.
what's the way to end the show. I mean, or unless you like the way Scott just ended it there. Just, I don't know. I got to tell you something. I got to tell you something, Mozilla. I got to say it. I always love these shows where like the hosts struggle to end the show, where they have such trouble. Like they have like separation. They have separation anxiety, right?
Like, we have to end it, but I don't want to. We could just talk forever.
Yeah, I gotta end it. I gotta end it.
Yeah, fade to black.
All right, see
End
you
it
guys.
now.
Peace. All right, I'm gonna end it here.
Peace.
My finger
Okay.
is on the stop button right now. Bye.